What if I told you that the single most powerful language learning tool in the world isn't a book or an app or even a specific part of your brain? What if it was something we can only, and I mean only, find in another person? Today, we're going to explore that profound, scientifically proven link between human connection and our ability to speak. Our story starts somewhere that feels like it's straight out of fiction, the phenomenon of feral children. And yeah, these are real, documented cases of kids who grew up with almost no human contact. Their stories are tragic for sure, but they're also absolutely fascinating because they hold a critical clue to understanding ourselves. So let's meet Victor, who was known as the Wild Boy of Aveyron. He was discovered in the forests of France way back in 1799, and he behaved more like a wild animal than a person. A dedicated scientist spent years trying to teach him, but language, it just remained out of reach. He picked up a few words, sure, but he never learned to have a conversation or form real sentences. And this isn't just some historical oddity. Fast forward more than 150 years to 1970, and we have the tragic case of Jeannie. She wasn't raised in the wild, but in a prison of horrific abuse, isolated in a single room for more than a decade. When she was finally found at age 13, she was completely silent. And just like Victor, despite years of intensive therapy, the complex rules of grammar, they were like a locked door she could never quite open. Then there's the incredible story of Oksana Malaya from Ukraine. After being abandoned by her parents, she found shelter and, well, family in a kennel, living with a pack of dogs for 6 years. When she was found, she had adopted their behaviors. She would bark, pant, and even walk around on all fours. She was 100% biologically human, but her behavior was canine. So this leaves us with this huge, profound puzzle. Victor, Jeannie, Oksana, their vocal cords worked, their ears could hear just fine. The basic physical hardware for language, it was all there. So what was missing? Why couldn't they unlock this skill that feels so fundamentally human? Okay, so the first piece of this puzzle has everything to do with timing. It turns out our brains have this kind of use it or lose it window for language, a special period where learning is almost automatic, before it gets much, much harder. And this graph here just lays it out perfectly. It tracks how well someone can learn a language against the age they start learning. And look at that trend. It's undeniable. For the first few years of life, learning is a breeze. But after that, the line just plummets. The older we get, the tougher it is to really become fluent. Scientists have a name for this, of course. They call it the critical period. Think of it as a limited time offer. It's a window where the brain is incredibly flexible and just primed to absorb the super complex patterns of language. If a child doesn't get that exposure during this time, that window starts to close, and the brain's architecture for language might never fully form. So, timing is a huge deal, but that really just brings up another question, doesn't it? What exactly needs to happen inside that critical window? Is just hearing a bunch of words enough? Well, a really groundbreaking experiment set out to answer that very question. Let's just frame the question really clearly. If you take a baby during this critical period and just expose them to a foreign language on TV or through some audio recordings, will their little sponge-like brain just soak it all up? Or is there some other magic ingredient that's required? To test this, a researcher named Patricia Kuhl and her team designed this brilliant experiment. They took a group of 9-month-old American babies and exposed them to Mandarin Chinese. One group of babies got to learn from a real, live person who played with them and spoke to them. The other group got the exact same content from the exact same people, but they saw it on a TV screen. The results were absolutely astonishing. They completely changed how we understand learning. The babies who interacted with a live person, they showed incredible learning of Mandarin sounds. But the babies who only watched the TV or just listened to the audio, they learned absolutely nothing. Zilch. Their results were identical to babies who had never heard a word of Mandarin in their lives. Now let that sink in. The crucial point is this. The words, the sounds, all of the raw data, it was 100% identical. The only thing that changed was the presence of an interacting, responsive human being. That is the social spark. This discovery was a total game changer. It proved that social interaction isn't just a nice little bonus for learning, it is an absolute requirement. But why? I mean, what is actually happening inside the brain that makes a live person so essential? This brings us to a really powerful theory called the social gating hypothesis. The basic idea is that the social part of our brain acts like a gatekeeper. It guards the parts of the brain that learn language. And without the key, which is live social interaction, that gate just stays shut. The information, no matter how good it is, simply can't get in. So how does this social key actually work? Well, it seems to work on a few different levels. First, it completely turbocharges our attention. Second, it gives us all these crucial social cues. Like looking at something when you talk about it, which helps a baby connect words to objects. Third, it creates a sense of relationship, which makes the information feel relevant and important. And finally, it fires up the brain systems that tell it, hey, this matters. Pay attention and learn this stuff. And, this isn't some new fringe idea. It built on a really foundational theory from a psychologist named Lev Vygotsky. He argued that all learning, at its core, is social. We don't just passively absorb knowledge, we build it together by interacting with other people. And language, he said, is the ultimate tool for doing that. So let's bring it all together now. We've got the idea of the critical window, and we've got this concept of social gating. With these two pieces in hand, we can finally go back to those silent children we started with and really understand the mystery of their silence. When you look at the two paths of development, the contrast is it's night and day. Without that social nurturing, a child's mind, it just stays dormant in these key areas. They might be physically human, but they're missing the software of language, culture, and complex emotion. But with that social nurturing, that very same child blossoms into a fully realized person. So, the answer to our puzzle is finally clear. The tragedy of Victor and Jeannie wasn't some defect in their biology. Their brains had all the potential for language, but it was never activated. They missed their critical window, and more importantly, they never got the social spark, that interactive key they needed to unlock that potential. The gate stayed shut. It really all comes down to this simple but incredibly powerful truth. Nurture isn't just about keeping us alive. It's about helping us become. We aren't born fully human. We are made human through our connections with each other. And this all leads to a really big question for the world we live in right now. We know for a fact that just passively watching a screen can't replace a real human for learning language. So, in an age where screens are literally everywhere, what does this science tell us about raising the next generation? How do we make sure that we are protecting that very social spark that defines our humanity?